What if the dumbest reason to miss a 100,000-ton cruise ship was not getting lost or stuck in traffic, but something far more ridiculous than your brain can possibly imagine? One person fished a soggy flip-flop out of the ocean while the ship sailed. Another tried bribing a port official with a single wrinkled 20 to halt the entire vessel. Somebody got locked inside a fake pirate dungeon by an overexcited actor. One traveler even chose a fresh tattoo over actually boarding his ship. These passengers ignored the departure clock for reasons so unbelievable your jaw will hit the floor. We collected 49 of the wildest port mishaps ever recorded, and each one is crazier than the last. Stay until the very end because the final few are absolutely insane. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss the boat like these legends did. 1. An old woman in Nassau planted her feet inside a food truck line and refused to budge until her conch fritters were properly boxed. The final ship horn blasted across the harbor 3 separate times. She did not even flinch at the sound. The poor vendor begged her to run for the gangway. She simply tapped her foot and demanded extra hot sauce on the side. Other passengers watched in absolute horror as the ramp lifted away. She just smiled and took one slow, satisfied bite. 2. A group of sunburned spring breakers in Key West discovered a rusty construction wheelbarrow behind a local bar and decided it was the perfect ambulance for their passed-out friend. They wheeled him toward the dock with total misplaced confidence. The squeaky wheel kept wobbling violently to one side. He slid out face first onto the pavement twice. Nearby tourists filmed the entire slow-motion disaster on their phones. The ship horn sounded loudly as the 3 of them argued about whose turn it was to push. 3. 5 short minutes separated a young couple from their gangway, and they refused to accept defeat. A confused beach vendor reluctantly handed over the keys to his jet ski. They roared across the harbor, chasing a moving 100,000-ton vessel like tiny action heroes. The husband kept shouting of some imaginary open door near the waterline. Every crashing wave smacked his wife directly in her shocked face. Crew members waved frantically from above while the ship cruised onward without its determined sea chasers. 4. Way too many goodies from an Amsterdam smart shop completely rearranged one tourist's sense of reality. Linear time dissolved into a soft, swirling puddle around his sandals. The harbor seemed to gently float upward toward the friendly clouds above him. By the time his brain rebooted, the ship had vanished entirely from the dock. Chasing it meant boarding an international commuter train into a whole different country. Fellow riders watched him grin at his own glowing fingers for the entire bewildering journey. 5. Stranded on a sleepy Greek island, a retired principal decided panic was simply beneath her. She strolled confidently into a local school like she still ran the building. Curious students immediately adopted the charming stranger as their guest of honor. They organized an impromptu concert, bursting with sing-dancing and a generous homemade dinner. She applauded each performance proudly, as though this glorious detour had been her plan all along. The cruise line, meanwhile, hunted desperately for one passenger happily eating dessert. 6. Plenty of time existed in the imagination of a relaxed couple docked in Civitavecchia. A casual train into Rome and a full Vatican tour sounded perfectly reasonable to them. Nobody had mentioned the port sits over an hour outside the actual city center. Cold reality struck somewhere near the steps of St. Peter's Basilica. They bolted back toward the station, drowning in panic, sweat, and deep regret. Their taxi screeched into an empty terminal long after the ship released its ropes. 7. Friendly Nassau port security offered one clumsy older passenger a generous ride down the endless pier. She climbed into the speedy golf cart, feeling absolutely regal about the whole thing. One sharp, confident turn near the dock edge spelled instant disaster. His balance abandoned her completely as she tumbled sideways with a startled yelp. Straight into a towering mountain of unattended luggage, she rolled and crashed. Suitcases exploded everywhere while the ship horn seemed to laugh at her from the water. 8. Pure panic seized a frantic mother the second she spotted ropes being cast off the dock. Every bag dropped from her hands as she launched into a desperate sprint. One enormous detail completely escaped her terrified racing mind during the chaos. Her weeping 8-year-old daughter sat alone on the cold concrete behind her. The little girl waved a tiny, confused hand toward her vanishing mom. Bystanders gasped before gently scooping up the child and redirecting the mortified woman back around. 9. Megaphone in hand, a stubborn late traveler claimed his spot right on the pier edge. Dramatic threats flew upward toward the captain perched high above the churning water. He swore he would dive into the ocean and scale the rope pilot ladder himself. Those massive engines were already fully engaged and roaring white foam everywhere. Crew members simply shook their heads at his absurd, heroic announcement. Onlookers stepped backward slowly while quietly filming the entire meltdown for everyone at home. 10. Down a completely deserted pier raced a determined shopper with bags flapping behind her. A docked United States Coast Guard vessel caught her desperate wandering eye nearby. Through sheer audacity, she convinced the crew to launch their fast rescue boat for her. They sped her across the harbor toward the cruise ship moving side hatch. Disbelief washed over the cruise crew as a military boat delivered one breathless straggler. She climbed aboard acting like hitching military rides was simply her normal routine. 11. Mid-braid at a busy island market stall, a woman absolutely refused to surrender her chair. 40 hard-earned dollars had already changed hands, and she demanded full value. The vendor pleaded as the ship horn screamed across the entire harbor. None of those warnings moved her stubborn, determined heart even slightly. She finally reached the dock sporting exactly half a head of beautiful tight braids. The other half flapped around in a wild, tangled disaster while everyone struggled not to laugh. 12. Every wild iguana near the St. Thomas Welcome Center became one family's sacred photography mission. Each sunbathing lizard apparently deserved its own perfect glowing Instagram portrait. The dad crouched lower and lower, chasing that ideal dramatic reptile angle. Their exhausted teenage son begged them to glance at the clock just once. Nobody listened because iguana number 17 looked especially photogenic that afternoon. By the time they looked up, the ship was already drifting smugly toward open water. 13. 3 entire hours dissolved while a tourist battled fiercely over an obviously fake luxury watch. Paying $50 felt like a personal insult he simply could not tolerate. The worn-down vendor eventually surrendered at $15 out of pure exhaustion. He celebrated this glorious triumph by checking the time on his shiny new prize. The hands were frozen solid, and the sail-away window had completely closed. His grand victory amounted to one broken trophy and one thoroughly missed cruise. 14. Sweat poured down a late passenger as he charged triumphantly up the closest gangway available. He flashed his cruise card at the smiling crew with bulletproof confidence. Something about the ship colors looked strangely unfamiliar to his frazzled brain. A polite officer gently explained this happened to be a Royal Caribbean vessel. His actual cabin waited patiently aboard the Carnival ship, parked 3 docks away. His confidence deflated instantly while dozens of amused strangers enjoyed the entire embarrassing scene. 15. Commanding a massive conga line at a rowdy port sidebar felt absolutely glorious to one man. His hips swayed wildly as cheering strangers gripped his shoulders from behind. Far above on deck 10, his furious wife shrieked his name into the wind. The thumping party music swallowed every single desperate warning she launched downward. He kicked his legs sideways, totally unaware the ship was already pulling away. She watched helplessly as her husband vanished into a sea of dancing tourists. 16. A single cheap foam flip-flop slipped free and splashed into the harbor gap. Common sense screamed at the runner to abandon the worthless, soggy thing immediately. Instead, he dropped to his knees and snatched up the nearest selfie stick. 10 irreplaceable minutes drained away while he poked around the murky water. The gangway crew shouted repeatedly for him to forget the silly sandal. He finally rose victorious, clutching one dripping flip-flop as his ship glided peacefully away. 17. A sudden harbor gust snatched a giant souvenir sombrero straight off one passenger's head. The enormous hat tumbled directly into a clearly marked restricted port zone. Retrieving it somehow felt far more urgent than actually boarding the waiting ship. Armed security guards watched a grown adult dart dramatically after a runaway hat. A bizarre cat-and-mouse chase unfolded across the forbidden concrete area. The sombrero escaped triumphantly while his crews quietly departed without its hat-obsessed owner. 18. Roughly 30 minutes before all aboard, a traveler decided fresh ink sounded perfect. A permanent multicolored anchor seemed like the ideal spontaneous vacation souvenir. The artist warned him repeatedly that quality tattoos demand serious patience and time. He waved away every concern while admiring his half-finished forearm masterpiece. The needle buzzed steadily along as the ship horn echoed through the doorway. He strolled out beautifully decorated yet completely shipsless, with plastic wrap still hugging his arm. 19. Watching the ramp slowly rise, pushed one desperate passenger toward pure theatrical genius. He clutched his chest dramatically and collapsed onto the concrete pier with a groan. The whole performance aimed to force the ship into a sudden medical stop. Crew members radioed urgently as medical staff came rushing toward the fallen man. The instant security arrived, he sprang back onto his feet perfectly healthy. His Oscar-worthy heart attack earned him nothing but suspicious glares and one departed ship. 20. A fully inflated giant pink flamingo pool float became one passenger's prized boarding companion. He proudly attempted to squeeze the enormous bird through the narrow gangway tunnel. The ridiculous float wedged itself sideways and trapped him completely in the passage. He pushed and grunted while the plastic flamingo refused to cooperate whatsoever. Frustrated crew members tried desperately to free the human flamingo sandwich. Behind him, an irritated line of passengers groaned as the departure clock kept ticking. 21. A cheerful pack of elderly travelers rented motorized segways for a charming island adventure. The narrow cobblestone street quickly became their personal slow-motion nightmare. Their little fleet bunched together into one hopeless, tangled cluster of confusion. Nobody remembered which lever made the wobbly machines actually reverse or turn. They drifted in tiny, helpless circles, bumping gently into one another repeatedly. The departure clock kept ticking, while 6 confused seniors spun around like lost bumper cars. 22. Deep beneath a shady palapa, one woman melted into the most blissful beach massage imaginable. Every muscle dissolved as the gentle hands worked their soothing magic. She drifted into a sleep so profound that the entire world simply faded away. The ship released its thunderous emergency horn blast across the whole shoreline. Not a single eyelash on her peaceful face even twitched at the sound. Everyone scrambled toward the dock while she snored softly through her vacation, ending nap. 23. A carefree couple rented a rattly cheap moat to explore a gorgeous Caribbean island. The winding coastal road delivered exactly the freedom they had been craving. One narrow bridge stood between them and the waiting cruise terminal ahead. A massive herd of stubborn local livestock completely blocked the only path across. They honked and pleaded while lazy cows stared back with total indifference. The animals refused to move an inch as their precious boarding window slowly evaporated. 24. A devastated family who missed the boat decided diplomacy was clearly beneath them. They stormed into the tiny Port Authority office demanding immediate dramatic action. Barricading themselves inside felt like a perfectly reasonable negotiation tactic somehow. They insisted the bewildered staff simply force the giant ocean liner to turn around. The poor employees explained that oceans and ships do not work that way. Reality eventually won as the family sulked out toward a very expensive plane ticket instead. 25. Arriving impossibly late, one pier runner found the ship already 20 feet from the dock. Most people would crumble into tears at such a heartbreaking sight. This particular character chose a completely different and gloriously petty response instead. He launched into a wildly animated, sarcastic dance right on the dock edge. Hundreds of passengers watched the spectacle through their curious binoculars above. He bowed dramatically at the end, while his floating audience cheered his absurd farewell performance. 26. An independent diving excursion ran disastrously behind schedule near a busy tourist downtown. One panicked passenger had no choice but to sprint a full mile through traffic. The thick neoprene wetsuit clung to his body like a suffocating rubber sausage casing. Heavy flippers slapped loudly against the pavement with every awkward waddling step. Tourists stared and snapped photos of the sweating amphibian man weaving through crowds. He flopped toward the dock just in time to watch his ship pulling away. 27. One confident tech enthusiast decided the pier was the perfect drone launching spot. He wanted a breathtaking cinematic shot of the magnificent ship sailing away. His eyes locked onto the screen as the little drone climbed higher and higher. The footage looked absolutely stunning, and he beamed with pure creative pride. Somewhere in his focused mind, he forgot a tiny important detail completely. He was supposed to actually be standing aboard that beautiful departing ship himself. 28. A frustrated group spent 2 endless hours digging frantically through warm beach sand. Their rental Jeep keys had vanished somewhere into the golden grainy abyss. Each person sifted handful after handful while the minutes silently slipped away. The ship departed without them by what felt like an entire painful mile. Massive local towing fees waited patiently to add insult to their sandy injury. They finally found the keys glittering uselessly beside one very smug seagull. 29. A proud snorkel discovered a gorgeous chunk of protected brain coral underwater. Smuggling the sharp, jagged souvenir inside his swim trunks seemed perfectly logical somehow. He waddled stiffly toward the port gate with an extremely suspicious bulging waistline. Sharp-eyed customs officers immediately noticed his bizarre, uncomfortable shuffling walk. They detained the wincing tourist and uncovered the illegal scratchy treasure instantly. His ship sailed onward while he explained his coral-filled shorts to unamused officials. 30. Perched on a distant hilltop, one amateur photographer obsessed over capturing the perfect sunset. Good lighting simply refused to satisfy his impossibly demanding artistic standards that evening. He waited and waited for those absolute flawless golden conditions to finally appear. The all-aboard announcement drifted faintly up the slope toward his completely deaf ears. Each passing minute promised slightly richer light just beyond the glowing horizon. He captured one gorgeous sunset and one heartbreaking photo of his ship sailing away without him. 31. Slumped on a curb outside a closed coffee shop sat one oblivious teenager. Free Wi-Fi was the only treasure that mattered to him at that moment. A massive video game update slowly crawled across his glowing phone screen. The entire bustling world around him simply ceased to exist completely. Tourists rushed past toward the dock while he stared down hypnotized. The download finally finished just as his ship finished leaving the harbor entirely. 32. Standing at the port gate, one traveler felt his stomach drop into his sandals. His physical passport sat locked inside a beach resort hotel room's safe. That resort happened to sit on the exact opposite end of the whole island. No amount of frantic pocket padding magically conjured the missing document. The realization hit him like a slow-motion tropical disaster unfolding. His ship waited for nobody as he calculated the impossible cross-island sprint ahead. 33. A trusting family followed a random stranger holding a flimsy cardboard shortcut sign. He promised a quick secret path leading straight back to their waiting ship. They marched along confidently, believing their lucky local guide knew the way. The friendly streets slowly twisted into an unfamiliar, quiet residential neighborhood instead. Their so-called shortcut had delivered them deep into someone's sleepy backyard district. This mysterious guide simply vanished while their ship horn echoed mockingly in the distance. 34. One whimsical shopper fell hopelessly in love with a giant hand-carved mahogany rocking chair. The massive wooden beast clearly would never fit inside any normal suitcase. Their entire final port hour vanished into complicated freight shipping calculations. Confused clerks scribbled wild international cargo rates onto crumpled little papers. The rocking chair dream slowly crushed their actual shipboarding schedule completely. They watched their vessel depart while clutching one absurd receipt for furniture they could not carry. 35. In a complete panic, a frantic husband sprinted back into the port shopping mall. His mission was finding his missing wife before the ship sailed away forever. He shoved through crowds, shouting her name with growing desperate energy. One tiny detail had escaped his racing, terrified imagination entirely. His wife had calmly boarded the ship 30 full minutes earlier without him. She sat cozy in their cabin reading a book while her husband searched the wrong building. 36. Two eager adventurers paddled their rental kayak far into the open ocean bay. The sparkling water and freedom convinced them to push just a little further out. Distance crept up silently until the shoreline shrank into a tiny green smudge. Suddenly, their tired arms simply refused to fight the strong pulling current. Each desperate paddle stroke barely moved the stubborn little kayak forward. Their ship departed on schedule while they bobbed helplessly far from the distant port. 37. A bottle of motion sickness pills slipped from one traveler's hand into a storm drain. Replacing them suddenly became an epic 4-hour foreign medical adventure. He wandered through an unfamiliar city navigating confusing pharmacy systems alone. Language barriers turned every simple request into an exhausting guessing game. Each closed counter and puzzled clerk swallowed another precious chunk of time. His ship sailed away while he finally clutched one tiny victorious bottle of pills. 38. Deep inside a sprawling covered straw market wandered one hopelessly disoriented shopper. The endless labyrinth of craft stalls swallowed her sense of direction whole. Every colorful aisle looked exactly like the last three confusing colorful aisles. She circled the same friendly basket vendor at least 4 separate times. The exit toward the main street seemed to playfully relocate itself constantly. Her ship horn faded into silence while she remained lost among the woven souvenirs. 39. A desperate pier runner approached a stern port authority official with a wrinkled $20 bill. He waved the cash hopefully like a magic key to stopping the entire ocean. His brilliant plan involved bribing someone into halting a multi-million-dollar vessel. The unimpressed official stared down at the pathetic crumpled offering in disbelief. No amount of pocket change could possibly turn a moving cruise ship around. Security politely escorted the hopeful briber away as his ship cruised confidently onward. 40. A breezy parasailing excursion turned chaotic when a sudden gust grabbed the lines. The tangled ropes wrapped themselves violently around a tall, swaying palm tree. 2 cruise passengers ended up dangling a full 10 feet above the sand. They swung gently back and forth like confused human wind chimes overhead. Their ship horn honked a cheerful goodbye somewhere beyond the beach. Rescue crews scratched their heads while the stranded pair waved sadly at their departing vessel. 41. A stubborn passenger flatly refused to pay one slightly inflated tourist taxi fare during a transit dispute. Principle suddenly mattered far more than catching his enormous waiting ship. He laced up his heavy work boots and chose to walk 6 brutal miles instead. Sweat soaked through his shirt as the relentless tropical sun punished his pride. Each blistered step felt like a noble protest against unfair pricing. His ship sailed away long before his aching feet ever reached the empty terminal. 42. High above the jungle floor, one traveler dangled helplessly on a stalled canopy platform. The mechanical brakes on the Eco-Adventure zipline jammed completely without warning. He swung gently among the treetops, while exotic birds judged him silently. The final all-aboard window ticked away somewhere far below the green canopy. Rescue workers shouted instructions he could barely understand through the leaves. His ship departed while he remained suspended like a confused tourist-shaped ornament. 43. An obsessed geocacher tracked a hidden container deep into a restricted national park forest. The thrilling digital hunt completely erased any thought of the return journey. He plunged further through thick brush, celebrating each satisfying little discovery. Reality arrived once he realized civilization sat miles behind the dense trees. The long, sweaty hike back became an unexpected survival expedition entirely. His ship sailed peacefully away while he stumbled out of the wilderness hours too late. 44. One relaxed gentleman settled into an old-school barbershop for an authentic straight razor shave. The hot towel and steady blade promised the ultimate local pampering experience. Halfway through the shave, the front door handle suddenly snapped clean off. The flustered barber realized he had accidentally locked them both inside completely. They rattled the stuck door while half his face stayed covered in foam. His ship horn echoed outside as the trapped pair searched for any other escape. 45. Buried inside a fascinating history exhibit, one tourist wore heavy noise-canceling museum headphones. The narrator's soothing voice transported him deep into ancient forgotten worlds. A minor electrical fire triggered loud building-wide evacuation announcements everywhere. Every single warning bounced harmlessly off his thick, padded, sealed headphones. Crowds streamed urgently toward the exits, while he nodded along to the audio tour. He emerged calmly much later to discover both an empty museum and a departed ship. 46. Deep into a portside casino poker tournament, one passenger reached the final table. A glittering $5,000 jackpot dangled tantalizingly within his reach. Walking away now felt absolutely unthinkable to his competitive gambling heart. The all-aboard announcement meant nothing against such glorious potential winnings. He clutched his cards, refusing to fold or even glance at the clock. His ship departed while he chased a jackpot worth far less than a missed cruise. 47. Slathered in sticky homemade aloe, one heavily sunburned passenger sprawled across a beach bench. The cool, soothing gel finally calmed his angry lobster-red shoulders. A wave of pure relaxation washed over his exhausted, overheated body. He drifted into a deep, contented nap as the aloe slowly hardened on his back. The departure time floated away unnoticed during his peaceful, sticky slumber. He woke up, glued to the bench just in time to watch his ship vanish. 48. A thrilled tourist volunteered for a live pirate battle reenactment at an old stone fort. The roaring cannons and clashing swords made him feel gloriously heroic. An overzealous actor playing the villain shoved him into a display dungeon cell. The heavy iron door clanged shut and locked him inside the dark little chamber. Everyone assumed his frantic shouting was simply part of the dramatic show. His ship sailed away while he begged the cackling pretend pirates for freedom. 49. One trusting passenger stashed his clothes, ship card, and wallet inside a digital beach locker. The fancy electronic water park locker promised total worry-free convenience. A sudden localized power outage froze the entire system completely solid. The stubborn locker refused to open no matter how many buttons he frantically jabbed. He stood there dripping wet in his swimsuit with absolutely no identification. His ship departed while he negotiated desperately with a glitchy, unresponsive metal box. And there you have it. 49 human beings who looked a departing cruise ship right in the eye and decided that flip-flops, braids, iguanas, and fake heart attacks were simply more important. The ocean waited for nobody, and honestly, these legends earned every second of their walk of shame. If even one of these stories made you laugh out loud, do that BrainFumble a favor and smash the like button. Subscribe and ring that notification bell so you never miss the next batch of glorious chaos. Share this with the friend who would absolutely fish their sandal out of the harbor. Now tell me down in the comments which one of these 49 disasters had you screaming, "Why would you do that?" We are reading every single one.